A few minutes ago, an authoritative military expert and former lieutenant colonel of the People's Militia of the Luhansk People's Republic, Andrei Marochko, stated that over the past 48 hours, Russian troops have significantly intensified their offensive actions in the Kharkiv direction of the front. According to him, units of the Russian army are advancing both in the north and east of the Kharkiv region. Against this backdrop, the soldiers of the 44th Army Corps announced the liberation of the strategically important settlement of Staritsa, southwest of Volchansk. As evidence, video footage was published where it is clearly visible how Russian soldiers hoisting the Russian flag on a radio tower in the center of this settlement. According to military expert Andrei Marochko, the liberation of the settlement of Staritsa by Russian troops caused significant damage to the Ukrainian army. The fact is that the settlements of Staritsa, Grafskoy, and Vilcha cover the city of Volchansk from the west and south. After the liberation of all these settlements by Russian troops, the Ukrainian army units located in the southern part of Volchansk will actually find themselves encircled. However, the bad news for the Ukrainian General Staff and its NATO military advisors did not end there. As it turned out, on December 25 at 7 a.m. Moscow time, advanced units of the group of troops under the designation Zapad entered the settlement of DVURECNAYA and took under fire control the main supply route of the Ukrainian garrison in Kupiansk. Moreover, it is reliably known that immediately after that, the Ukrainian army units fled from this settlement without offering any resistance. The fact is that these Ukrainian army units did not have the additional reserves and heavy equipment that were so necessary for the defense of this settlement. However, the retreating Ukrainian formations did not go far. They occupied the adjacent heights near the settlement, trying to prevent Russian troops from expanding their bridgehead on the western bank of the Oskol River. Thus, the last relatively stable sector of the front of the Ukrainian army began to shake at the seams. And this fact certainly affects the general morale of the Ukrainian soldiers. Now the Russian army is advancing literally everywhere, even where the Kiev regime seemed to have strong defenses. In the east of the Kharkiv region. Against the backdrop of the numerous successes of the Russian army on the battlefield, the Russian aerospace forces, together with the missile forces, continue to launch massive and combined missile strikes against military installations and energy infrastructure facilities in Ukraine. So, a few hours ago, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation officially announced that on the night of December 25, a combined missile attack was launched on hydroelectric and thermal power plants in Ukraine, as well as enemy logistics hubs and military facilities. According to the Russian military department, all targets were successfully hit and destroyed. And now, 20 hours after the official statement of the Russian Ministry of Defense, the first details of this missile attack have appeared. As it turned out, on the night of December 25, Russian forces launched a devastating missile attack on enemy targets in such regions of Ukraine as Kharkiv, Kiev, Dnipropetrovsk, Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk, Kirovograd, Cherkassk, Khmelnytsky, Poltava, and Vinnytsia. It is reliably known that independent monitoring services have recorded about 50 powerful explosions in these Ukrainian regions. It is noteworthy that during this missile attack, an air alert sounded throughout Ukraine, even in the most remote western settlements. It is reported that within 60 minutes after the launch of the missile attack, the Russian military managed to hit about 20 energy infrastructure facilities in Ukraine. In particular, Russian missiles rained down on thermal power plants in cities such as Sloviansk, Dnipro, Kiev, and Burstin. Moreover, hydroelectric power plants in cities such as Kremenchuk, Svetlovodsk, and Kryvyi Rog were also subjected to missile attacks. Immediately after that, the central, southern, northern, and western parts of Ukraine were left without electricity and heat. Later, at 2 p.m. Moscow time, the second wave of missile strikes began. This time, Russian ballistic and cruise missiles attacked military installations and logistics hubs of the Ukrainian army and NATO forces. In particular, several armories, fuel depots, and places for the deployment of the personnel of the Ukrainian army and foreign mercenaries were hit and destroyed in cities such as Lviv, Poltava, Kharkiv, and Cherkasy. Against this backdrop, I would especially like to mention the missile attack on the city of KOZYATYN, in the Vinnytsia region. In particular, Russian Iskander-M ballistic missiles hit a section of the railway, in the area of the locomotive depot and the KOZYATYN Tovarny station. It is reported that the missile strike was carried out at the exact moment when the unloading of the NATO military train was taking place there. It is reported that this train was carrying American ATACMS ballistic missiles, 155mm artillery shells, as well as several dozen Bradley infantry fighting vehicles. According to representatives of the Russian underground in Ukraine, the repeated detonation of American ballistic missiles and artillery shells turned out to be so powerful that Ukrainian firefighters were still afraid to approach the burning train. Judging by the fact that immediately after the destruction of this military train, the Ukrainian army and NATO forces launched a missile attack on crowded places and residential buildings in the Russian city of Lvov, in the Kursk region, indicates that Moscow's enemies really lost a very valuable military cargo. By the way, a missile attack on the Russian city of Lvov has already claimed the lives of 3 young women. According to the acting governor of the Kursk region, Alexander Kinstein, the Nazi regime in Kiev is deliberately launching missile strikes against civilian objects in an attempt to sow fear among Russian citizens. Against this backdrop, he called on the Russian army to punish these criminals immediately. By the way, judging by the abnormal activity of the Russian military at the Engels Air Base and the Kapustin Yar test site, the Kremlin is preparing another crushing blow to Ukraine. It is possible that in the coming days, or even hours, we will once again see the destructive work of the world's most powerful hypersonic ballistic missile Oshnik.